Some of the major reasons that the blockade was so effective was because the South was so dependent on agriculture that only 10% of the nation's factories were in the South. And this left them with little to no supplies, because most of the southern factories, even the southern factories that they had, were in the very northern South, and they were one of the first things that were overtaken by Union soldiers. They didn't have the ability to replace their shoes, their clothing, a lot of manufactured things. It says the Confederate soldier was not well fed or well clothed and often fought in rags and barefoot. And the inability of the Confederacy to produce enough food and to be able to supply its soldiers with the correct clothing and basically to be able to take care of its army had a lot to do with why the Confederacy lost. At the Battle of Bull Run on July 16, 1861, the Confederates won despite serious supply deficiencies. Their army might have been able to follow up this victory with an assault on Washington, which at the time was largely defenseless. Beauregard evidently did want to do just that, but Johnson vetoed the move because the army was low on supplies. There was not one day's ration of food for the entire army. There was food available in the South, however, distribution was difficult because of the lack of railroads. Even when not interdicted by Union soldiers, the railroads could not transport enough food to feed civilians, the military, cavalry, horses, and draft animals. Moreover, when food was available, insufficiencies in transportation prevented adequate distribution. This is all because of the slave economy that they were fighting so hard to preserve was kept the South really, really rural, and they were just mainly focused on producing cotton, and that was their whole system of economy. But the fact that the North was more industrial, that it had more, it didn't have like all its eggs in one basket, so to speak, that it had manufacturing plants and farming, and it had more advantages in the war because it wasn't solely dependent on one thing for its economy to survive. Food played an important role in a number of military campaigns during the Civil War, and the most obvious were the Union sieges at Mississippi River towns of Vicksburg and Port Hudson in 1863. As a military tactic, these sieges prevented food from entering the two towns, which contributed directly to their surrender. Letters from Beauregard reported some regiments are nearly starving, and the want of food and transportation has made us lose all the fruits of our victory. And the fact that they didn't have food and that they didn't have supplies, it all goes back to how the South was so dependent on cotton, and that's what their main focus was.